All right, folks, we're going to get started. Anybody that has done this business for a little while knows that one of the biggest issues that we have is dealing with public feedback and having that social license to get the permits in the first place. And so Alyssa and Conor MacNair are with NC Oyster, and we came up with this title of From NIMBY, Not in My Backyard, to Yes in My Backyard. So trying to set the stage for working through some of the issues. So I'm going to hand it over to you all.
Morning. All right, so I will just kind of preface this by saying we are not at 100% YIMBY. We are working there, and we have made a blueprint to get there and for our industry to get there. So that's kind of how we have this presentation set up. We were supposed to do a panel, but instead we're doing a presentation with a little fun interactive segment at the end. So we'll just start out by introducing ourselves. I'm Alyssa MacNair. This is Conor, my husband. We started our farm in 2017. I'll let you give the intro on that.
Yeah, so we've been farming for almost, or I guess we're going into our 8th year now. We grow a little bit over 100. We grow a little bit over 1 million oysters a year. We have quite a few employees. We started off with a kayak without a paddle that we pushed over to a half-an acre sublease. Now we own 40 acres out on the water, multiple boats, 7 acres of waterfront, and I'd like to think we've built a little bit of a brand along the way.
So this is just an image of where our farm is in Topsail Sound. So we use the SEPA system, nice tight lines, vineyard-esque style. We have a ton of spoil islands around us. We like to think that our main farm, the one you can see at the top left there, is completely not separate from everybody else, but it's in its own bay. It's kind of hard to get back in there. So it's a great spot for a farm. This is just a little bit more about us quick. We have a venue called the Oyster Barn. You can see at the bottom middle picture, there's like an aerial vision of where the barn is situated to the water where we launch. We use a tractor and a boat. We pull down to the end of the road to launch. We do a little fun food on the weekends. We have events, parties. We have something called Shuck and Chill that we do every single Friday where people can come. It's almost like a farm stand. You buy oysters from us. You can sit down, shuck them. We have beer and wine and some other fun farm stand snacks. So 2 of the oysters we grow, this is called Dukes of Topsail Sound. And then we also have a green-gilled oyster called Divine Pines at Topsail Sound. And I'll let Conor kind of explain the history of where we're at. And the bay where the Oyster Barn is called Waters Bay. And this is a separate area from where our main big farm is, which you saw earlier.
So yeah, when we first started off, we lived in that townhouse closer to the larger longline farm, and we built that out first. And pretty much Alyssa and I found this whole piece of land that was for sale using the North Carolina lease map. There's a lot of leases in the back of this bay already. We always try to take old leases and turn them into bottom column or into water column and bottom column leases. That's how our state works. And I'm gonna go over that a little bit in a second, but we basically thought that if we found places that were already leases, then you'd offend less people. They were kind of already used to the poles, and ideally you would have known that there was some type of oyster operation in the back there. So Waters Bay has actually been used for a waterman's working area for hundreds of years. This was a picture from Browns Island, which is 2 islands north of us, but one of the elder gentlemen on the road who's worked there and shrimped there his whole life showed me some artifacts of the mullet camp, which this is a picture of that most people used to come and set up on the coastal shores of North Carolina. In this case, they would come from Maple Hill. They would come down and they would set up these houses for the first mullet blow, which was a northeast wind that would blow very hard in the fall and thus cause all the sea mullet to come in. And these guys would head out with those boats and collect those sea mullet, pack salted mullet into barrel, and they would also shuck pints of oysters. So yeah, that was just like a little bit of history about that specific area. But for us, like, we have the oyster barn up there, and then down closer to the water, it was a goal of ours to be able to have a little nursery site down there, and be able to grow oysters for our industry, which has experienced a lot of growth recently without a lot of growth in the nursery side of things. So we'll talk more about where we are with that. But here's a little map of where everything is. And we just thought that this was really important because we're going to talk about the leases that are approved. The current longline farm in BC Bay, which is the Banks Channels Bay. That's the farther one from the Oyster Barn. And then the Waters Bay farm is the lease directly behind the Oyster Barn. And so, yeah, that's just showing you, it's a quarter, like a little bit over a quarter acre from where we're launching to the bay. Like, you can see it, you can almost throw a rock at it. And then the other one that we're going to is like almost 4.5 miles away. So the leasing process in North Carolina is, of course, I could just read off of this, but they determine that you're eligible. You're over 18. You're not having a record for fishing illegally and getting any tickets. You select a type of lease. That's that bottom column that's going to give you 18 inches off the bottom to cultivate oysters with, and a water column. That's for suspended gear or floated gear, whatever have you. You have to have a bottom lease to have a water column lease. So again, we always bought the bottom lease first, and that was just transferred over. We could have used that immediately for 18 inches off the bottom. The water column, that they actually put another lease number on that. So you have to apply for it like you're applying for a completely new lease. So they then help identify the site and make sure that it's suitable. So ideally that would be with the Marine Patrol. That's, the governing force that actually uses the boat for like the Division of Marine Fisheries and the Department of Environmental Quality. Those are the agencies that are biggest for oyster leases and this process in North Carolina. They want to make sure that the site is not going to interfere with navigation. You're not in a major channel. You have to be, I believe 150 feet off of the shoreline. You have to be farther off a developed shoreline, and your lease plan needs to make sure that it's navigable and everybody can access it because it's everybody's waters. So you submit that application next, and they're going to go through your 24 pages of paperwork and make sure that your site plan is something that goes well with that suitable area. And then you have the public notice and hearing. So they're going to take out 2 newspaper articles and make sure that the public is aware of the hearing that you're about to hold in your local city or town. And then you have, after that's gone through and they approve it, then they would come to the site to inspect it and kind of give it one last eye over it. They send you this little notice that you need to put your signs up in 30 days. You got to put those signs up in 30 days and come check it out, and then you're set and ready to go.
All right, so I think that probably the easiest portion of applying for a lease is steps 1 through 5. And this is probably the hardest portion, all depending on time of year, what's going on in your local community, how many growers are around. So we are going to take a second to talk about the public hearings, because as a community, as an oyster community, this is where, even if you are not in that local community, you can get involved to help support other growers. The purpose of this is just like a town council meeting, to have the public come in and voice their opinion. So you can already kind of imagine how that's going to go. So I will just show you an example here. This is what it looked like when we applied for the 10-acre water column lease in Waters Bay. The North Carolina DEQ, they post this on their website. They give you all the information. They have a live WebEx version of the hearing. Bill and Beth called into ours. And then you can also submit public comments online if you are unable to make it as well, and voice your opinion. So there's a lot of ways that us as a community can support our fellow farmers. So we'll talk about the first few public hearings we had.
So yeah, the first public hearings that we had were for the current longline farm that we have everything set up now, what we built our brand on. Those were 5 years ago. We went into the town council. It was just the NC Oyster crew, which was just 4 people at that period in time, and then another oyster farmer who was applying for a lease, and nobody from the public showed up at all. The town council stood up and they said, "They have oysters. We like oysters. This is over." And that was the best one that I ever had.
It was in the middle of winter. Nobody was at the beach. Like it was all just so perfect. So
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Then our second public hearing did not go as perfectly. So we'll talk about this a lot more. And we actually have a kind of like a reenactment happening at the end of all of this. But we came prepared to our public hearing. We each prepared a speech. You are able to speak for 2 minutes. So I spoke a lot about our successes. I spoke about everything we do for the community. We've hosted events for the Coastal Federation at the barn. Like we're shipping out our oysters across the nation, putting Topsail on the map, like all of those. And then Connor, he spoke about all the facts behind the lease that we are applying for.
And I'll gonna say it a lot, but the first thing that I said and everything that every time I go to a public hearing, I always say that we're all supposed to work together. And I really wish that we could have had a conversation about this instead of just, getting stacked up with like 100 people in this room ready to go. They only let us talk first, so you don't get to hear anybody's things and rebuttal back to something that might just be completely false accusation. So we speak at the beginning. So, I really just led off with, we know that oyster farming is good for the environment, and we know that recreational fishing and commercial fishing is great, and all of us should be able to use this together. That's what a perfect day on the farm looks like to me, and I've seen most of you guys out there fishing and everything like that, and I know that we can work together. So after that, I just started listing off facts and being very data driven, and then we just had to. I think we listened for maybe 2 to 3 hours. After that, there was 104 people there to show their opinions. The group of recreational fishermen in that area were really good at organizing ahead of time. 104 comments were made the day, like all in 24 hours before this hearing, and then they had 100 people show up, and they all had this same piece of paper that said the same thing that obviously somebody with a good legal background had written up. But I have to applaud them for the ability to have that community, how quick that worked together. We work with the Farm Bureau now, and a lot of ways that the farmers get stuff done in the cotton and the corn industry. I mean, they all show up really strong together, and that was one thing that we're going to talk about our blueprint, but we didn't nail that down yet. We didn't have the strong community of like topsail growers alone that would show up to all of our hearings and support each other no matter what. We have Chris Mateo, who's our North Carolina Shellfish Growers Association president. He came and he did a perfect job of being the last person to sign in so he could help address everything that happened. But again, it's just, like being able to show up stronger in numbers and talk about that economic impact is really what politicians want to hear.
Can we have a show of hands, just who has dealt with a NIMBY situation, just so we can see who we're speaking to? Okay, it's like only everybody on this side. That's interesting. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So it looked to be about almost half of the room. So I personally think if it hasn't happened to you at some period in time, it might. So it's still awesome to listen to. These are just a couple negative articles that were released.
We thought it wasn't going to happen to us. We had a great hearing. Nobody showed up, and things changed.
We thought we did all the right things. Our farm is neat and tidy. We are out there every single day. We're professional in our community. We do a lot for the community. So it really caught us off guard. I'm just going to share this quote. This captured pretty much every public comment. This was like one good summary, and y'all are going to probably feel really heated after I read this, and it's a little lengthy, so just buckle up for a second. But here we go. I need a good NIMBY voice. This issue with building floating oyster farms is unfair to the citizens, and it basically comes down to greed. One individual gets to take control of a body of water that doesn't belong to him. He's legally allowed to create an unnatural, hazardous eyesore to grow and harvest oysters quicker and easier for his personal gain. It's all about the money. Who in here is like loaded off of oyster farming? I saw some hands. Okay. So that's a little upsetting. All right. The people on this island don't appreciate it. This is a serious threat to take away bodies of water that we all enjoy in different ways. We'd rather the oysters be grown the way nature intended, on the bottom, not a glob of plastic floating on the water for a flock of birds to sit and poop all over, creating a nasty sight to have to look at. With the construction of these farms, we will no longer be able to boat, fish, swim, or gig, or enjoy any of these areas in capacity anymore, all for one person's financial gain. Anyone with the exception of the one who has the big dollar signs in his eyes can see that this process ruins everything that brings people to Topsail Island. So we ask those power to do so. What's more important, the beauty of the island or a safe recreational activities? Yeah, so that was just one out of hundreds. We had our kids at this public hearing. They're like 3 and 4. Thank goodness my in-laws were there. We were like, send them home. Like it was rough. One of the saddest parts about the public hearing was one of, there was somebody who brought a child and he had the child go up, grab the microphone. He's probably 7 years old and say, I'll never be able to fish in my entire lifetime because of this oyster farm. And it was just really upsetting. And you were on the boat. They can attest. Bill and they were ready to fight. Okay. So first of all, we're just going to talk about this. So we're going to talk about how to deal with anybody who's bullying you. And I know we all know this, but just regrouping here, we're going to educate and we're not going to argue. So a
Nope.
lot of it is
Don't waste your time responding to those negative comments on
do
Instagram
not
and
go
fighting
on
with somebody.
Facebook
Yeah.
and say anything, right? If there is a negative article posted, if there's anything in the media, the only thing that that's going to do if you share that or respond to it is get more people's eyes on it and more people having an idea in their head of what you do is negative. So instead, every time you see something negative, you put out 3 to 4 positive things about what it is you do.
You don't do like, oh, I heard this, so this. Again, you just strictly keep it positive. Do not even bring up the negative. You're giving it eyes.
Right. Okay. Be visible and transparent. Host farm tours. And even if you can't we don't host farm tours, but we have somebody in our community who does a great job doing them. Send them their way. Like that is a great thing for a lot of people. Share behind the scenes content. We do a ton of that, and then some Q&A. So, and we invite people all the time to the barn to come and ask us any questions that they want. Find allies and build community support. We're going to talk about that later. And then exactly focusing on the positive press testimonials, and then just stay professional. Pick your battles. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to argue with that person on Facebook? And then all of this, not just from our shellfish hearing, but I'll let you talk about the situation.
Yeah, so it just keeps getting worse. They're going to possibly put a moratorium on topsoil where myself and a lot of other oyster farmers in North Carolina are located. There's been definitely an increase in density in this area, but you know, the greed reeks from the county commission. That's, you know, like real estate backed and everything like that. They're scared, you know, like they were not the people showing up to our public hearing saying this was in my backyard and it's ugly. It was mostly, you know, a fishing community. So now that those negative comments are out there, they're multiplying. And it's unfortunate, but the only thing that we can do is, you know, battle the way that we're battling about it. And it's honestly by keeping our lips shut and going to our legislators and going about it that way.
So after that public hearing, when we were really upset, we were like, what do we do? And so we called Bill and Beth and we're like, is there a blueprint for this situation? Like, what can we do? Like, how do we even come back from here? And Bill and Beth said, no, there isn't one that exists. And so, you know, like, why not create one? So that's kind of what we did. And we're still trying to improve this a lot, but if you are starting an oyster farm from day one, or if you're new to the industry, this is awesome to take notes on. Or if you are a veteran farmer and you haven't done any of these things that we're about to talk about, definitely take some notes and start doing them, or work with your local farming community to get these things done.
And we wanted to have this, like, we thought that maybe there would be something like this, like through East Coast Shellfish Growers or Oyster South and everything like that. And that's why we feel like this is going to be a panel towards the end of this all, because this is a blueprint that we've came up with, and there's things that we have done, things that we wish that we had done, and we would like you to help weigh in so that maybe at the end of this we have something that we can write up and work with. So begin with the end in mind. You know, for us, we thought that by buying bottom leases that were already in use, and turning them into sustainable farming, that would be the better way to go about it instead of just putting completely new poles out there. So again, we thought that that was going to be the best way to go about it. And at first, all these leases were approved without any obstacles at all. And then also thought, you know, it's extremely shallow where I am. There is no navigable water back there. It's impossible to get in there unless you're a professional fisherman in some type of fashion. So we chose the suspended longline systems, and we made the gaps 25 to 30 feet so that people can get in there easily. And we keep it really nice and tight. We always tell everybody that they're looking at us. You know, like that's what we tell the crew. They're looking at you. You know, so if everybody's got to look at it, it better look really good.
We this year became heavily involved with our local farm bureau. We do have a Shellfish Growers Association that we would like to be involved with more, but for us, things just really fell into place with the Farm Bureau. Connor holds two really awesome positions there, and we're both on the Young Farmer and Ranchers Committee. Every state has a Farm Bureau. I'm pretty sure every state has a Young Farmer and Ranchers Association. We just got back from a conference there. It's a really awesome community to be a part of because I've been talking about this a little bit, but we're all so excited to be here. You see other growers, you never see other oyster growers, and it's a big party, right? We're like, yes, like good to see you. Like oysters, so awesome. What we do is so awesome. And we never really talk at these conferences about what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Or we never really get to, I mean, maybe late night y'all are having those conversations, but I feel like like being a part of the farming community, you really are showing up and you're talking about your hardships and you're talking about how much debt you're in and you're talking about how you inherited generational debt and you're talking about a lot of those things. So a bigger community and people who have a voice on a much higher level has been really awesome for that.
Just so everybody knows, Farm Bureau does sell insurance, but Farm Bureau started in 1930s as a nonprofit for farms. They advocate for farms. You can be a part of Farm Bureau for $25 a year, and that goes to that advocacy. They started 20 years later to sell insurance because getting insurance as a farmer is hard. They actually take the profits from that and I'll put it back to advocating for farmers. So now that, I mean, everybody here should know that the definition of oyster farming most definitely aligns with agriculture now. And if you're filing a Schedule F, then you need to go to your Farm Bureau county and tell them that you want to be a voting member. And again, like we couldn't speak highly enough of how they've just, you know, they get you in here, they get you all dressed up. They're like, this is what you're going to say. And then they, you know, shove you in front of your legislator, you know, like that's a really unique thing that you have to do. And finding a place that would do that is been really supportive.
You start as an oyster farmer and you end up a politician. That's what we've been laughing about. Okay, so step 3 is educate. So there's a great way you can go about this. There's already a ton of educational materials out there. Start recirculating them. The East Coast Shellfish Growers Association has so many studies on their page, and it's one of my big goals to get Oyster South a page just like this, where we just compile and compile all of these studies, and it's very accessible for us. If you are giving a farm tour to somebody in your community, always give them a follow-up email with these links and like just overload them with information so there's no possible way they cannot be educated after those moments. And then we need to start young. That 7-year-old boy who walked up in our public hearing, that was very sad. Like we need to be in the school system. We need to be talking to these kids. We need to start at a young level, teaching them ag literacy. So there is something called Ag in the Classroom. Connor's super passionate about that. So I'll let you share just all the materials they have.
Yeah, they have, so Ag in the Classroom, they have like really affordable programs and spreadsheets for us. They have one on oysters and it's like a 4-page pamphlet and it comes with a lesson plan. So you can go to teachers in your counties, give them these ag mag things, and they come with lesson plans. And I think they cost cents because they're really trying to push them out there. And this is a program meant to set up for farmers to go and talk to everybody about what you do. And you need to take every chance that you can to do that. Because like Alyssa was saying, we always say, if we're not going to win this battle now, we're going to win it in 10 to 15 years. You know, just start young. You know, they're going to grow up and they're going to become involved.
And then just speaking about ag literacy. So what is ag literacy? It involves understanding how the industry works, where the food comes from, who grows it, the impact on the economy, environment, and technology. So another thing we spoke about at the Farm Bureau meeting was, you know, a lot of people now are getting into agritourism because row farmers and a lot of different types of farmers are having a hard time like holding on to their land and making money. So they're having to get into that. And so they're like upset because they're like, people just don't even know how to act on a farm. Like I'm taking them on a tractor ride and my tractor breaks down and I got to get off and fix it. And like these people are like, what the heck are you doing? And it's like, yeah, people are
Tour.
yeah, they're very just disconnected from what's going on. So understanding that ag literacy is a thing and we need to work to get people ag literate. And the ways to do that is by starting very simply, breaking it down. Picture diagrams like this is this. We don't need to shove text at people and articles that people write off the bat. I know I said do that on an email, but when you're sharing things like the visual of this is really digestible and easy to understand. So advocate. This is going to be the most important thing. If you are a farmer who's 3 to 4 years into this, this is very important to start working on now. So there's 4 P's of advocacy: personal relationships. So our situation dealt with recreational fishermen. And after the hearing, we reached out. We're like, how can we work together? We should not have, we should already have had that relationship. And we thought we did. And at our hearing, most people's negative comments started out with, I hate to do this to you. I love what you guys are doing, but I can't support this. So we should have thought a little bit better, been more aware of the amount of farmers coming into the area. There's a moratorium north and south. So we should have been feeling this out already and started reaching out and on that clean slate worked with our community. It's easiest to build the relationships with similarities.
Yeah, and we thought that we would have had them out to the barn and did that ahead of time, and it was like, 2 years prior to these hearings. So we knew that we should have done it. We didn't. So again, like this is just trying to be transparent. Like if there's things that you've learned from, I hope that we can make this plan better over time, and also the clean slate with your government. It's a lot harder to go in and just be a negative person and go in and be like, I need this thing, whereas if they already know you already been to your farm, already know your impact, it's a lot easier to go that way.
And so when it says, who are your 3 oh shit people? So that's like, when you are in a crisis, who are you going to call? And this is a really good weekend to have those 3 people in your back pocket. So this is, if your boat breaks down, who are you going to call? Or if you are dealing with a lot of public pushback, feeling like your community hates you really deep, dark, down in the dumps, who is that person? You need to be there for you, and you need to reach out to them and let them know, like, hey, I'm going to hit you up if things get really tough for me. And then what 3 people do you need to invite on the farm? Is it the governor of your state? Is it the mayor of your town? Like, leave here knowing exactly who the biggest impact, who are those 3 people? Reach out to them, invite them on the farm, get with your other local community. If you don't feel comfortable bringing them on your farm, ask if you can send them out or attend with another farmer in the area. This is all about just educating them, and then send them that follow-up email with all the educational materials. So when they go to their town council meetings or when they're speaking with the commissions, they have all that information available. And then obviously, if you are bringing people out to your farm, prepare, make sure everything looks good. Know that when you're out on the water, you are always on display. Marine Patrol especially is a good person to kind of see you and kind of get those thoughts in their head. And then professionalism, have etiquette. Like, I know that we're just trying to get the work done, get out there, get in, but it is good to, when you pull up to that public dock, like, be professional, have that etiquette. Same thing on those farm tours. And then just kind of know that, if you are trying to reach out and build relationships, or if you are working with your town council or whoever, you might not be able to change that person's mind. And in the end, you just have to realize that and understand. And then I'm going to let Connor talk really quick, because this is what most of these people care about. Understand the economic impacts and focus on the economy.
I'm sure there's a ton of Sea Grant people in here too, so I'm not like, I hope I'm not making a lot of work from you, but we needed this. And we got this done in 2022 and it was made available to me, of course, while I was having my issues, but we constantly need these studies to be updated because I need to be able to tell them what the impact is economically. Everybody loves to hear about the ecologic impact. I don't know about you. The people running my government are mostly interested in the economic impact. So being able to update those numbers and have them where they're rock solid, like we've experienced so much growth since 2022, which is when that previous article was done. So it's been it would be nice to be able to constantly track that number and see how much you're actually doing right.
And like one of the biggest arguments was that recreational fishermen pull in way more money by doing charters than oyster farmers do. And if we would have had like that in our back pocket to say during the speech, like that exact number, then
So this slide is just to remind everybody about that you're not going to change everybody's mind and that you need to approach this with empathic listening. You're not going to make big change with the other side unless you go to the table being clear-headed and understanding that you need to 100% listen to what they're saying and try your best to put yourself in their shoes. You know, I had a huge epiphany when I was like, these guys, they also get angry at each other when they fish in each other's spots. I'm fishing in their spot and I can see that, you know, like, and I understand what that is like. And I wonder what ways that I can truly be the best grower that I can to try to use this resource that we both have and remind them that it's something that's great for both of us. So just make sure that when you're going into these discussions that feel often heated, that you're practicing good listening and you're really trying to hear out the other people. Form a community. Like I was saying earlier, it was really impressive to see how good that group that came to our public hearing was able to formalize this great statement and get as many people to fill it out online and show up in person. And I can give more shout outs to Chris Mateo, our president for this group, but again, there wasn't anything hyper local with a bunch of people that I could call from Topsail that were going to come to my hearing. And to be honest with you, I think one single other farmer came to my hearing and he didn't say anything. And it kind of, it didn't make us look like we were all in this together. And to stand up there and say your economic impact and say that we're all in this together and act like a community is what the other side did. And it came off very strong. And I think that we can all agree that that's how you come across as a strong industry altogether.
now you know you can phone in, so you don't even have to be there. So we'll let us know. We'll call in. All right. And then share your story. Like, let people know you're real people out there. We're not huge ag. We're not
lining our pockets with greed.
We're not dollar signs in our eyeballs. Like, we are real people just trying to make a living and do something good for the community, the environment. So I don't think you really get into this with that mindset. And then buckle up because it is a bumpy ride. Things, again, do get hard. At those Farm Bureau conferences, they talk a ton about mental health. There was a keynote speaker who his dad was a strawberry farmer. All of their crops died one year. They had no crop insurance, and the dad ended up committing suicide. And the son started this advocacy group for mental health for farmers. And again, like it gets really tough. And I know we're all happy to be here this weekend, but if you reach out to people and just let them know, like, hey, you're one of my three, like, if I reach out to you, like, that means I probably really need you because, we have high highs and low lows as farmers and entrepreneurs. All right, 10 minutes. So really quick, now that you're fired up before the hearing, know the rules, prepare your statements, anticipate those counterpoints. And then during the hearing, let's be really professional. Let's dress appropriately. Let's introduce yourself clearly, stay on topic. Man, it's so hard to just sit there and take a beating, but do it with a smile on your face, no matter how hard it is. And then after speaking, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Just stay in this. Okay, so Oyster South, thank you so much for building this community for us, because without y'all, this would be a lot harder, and we just really appreciate you guys. We love this quote that says, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. So right now, what I'm going to do, I made some stickers for y'all. I'm going to pass around. They say support local oyster farmers. I don't like, there are periods in time, and I'm gonna have Rusty and Kanan come up because we're about to do a fun little skit kind of situation. But I think it's really awesome to take time to like appreciate the community and not just always think of yourself and your own brand. And sharing something that says support local oyster farms to people is, you know, I think it's going to do a little bit more in the end. So I'm going to pass these around. You can pick between two styles, and we'll set the scene here, let them get set up. We have a NIMBY right here. This is Rusty. Yeah. And then we have Kanan. He's going to be our oyster farmer. So the scenario the scenario is we have a huge mansion on the water. And Kanan just, you know, wanted to start a farm. He applied for a lease. This is a great spot to do so, right in this backyard. So we're gonna see how this goes down.
Okay, so welcome to Between Two Ferns. So Kanan, I was looking at your Instagram page. I see you have your shirt on. Is everything okay? So I was on the Facebook doing some research, and there's a couple of friends from the Coast Guard here. Caleb, you guys back there? There they are. Thank y'all. We're really from the Coast Guard. Have you talked to the Coast Guard about this thing?
Oh yeah, we're working with the county, the state, local stakeholders. We're making sure that everything's marked out and we go through the proper channels.
Good. So I was at the boat drinks and enjoying my one drink. Thank you, Bill. I noticed a lot of camaraderie. Is that going to work, do you think, for an industry that you help each other this much? I thought y'all were competing.
We can have competition and community.
Okay. So I'm thinking about, you know, tearing down all the trees and building some verbos. Would that be a problem? Because there's going to be hundreds of strangers around weekends. Is that any kind of disruption to your farm or any problem with that? You okay? Yes or no? It's just yes or no.
No, I don't know
Okay.
that.
Talk to me about using fertilizers on your farm. Is
Yeah.
that a concern?
No, actually, we're taking care of a lot of the fertilizers that get that come off of properties like
Okay.
yours.
Pesticides? Pesticides?
No pesticides.
Okay. Probiotics? Say no, just say no.
No.
Okay. Do you have to get permits or anything like that to do a farm?
Yes, we have a lot of permits through the state, through the Corps of Civil Engineers.
Okay, civil engineers. Entanglement.
Yeah.
You have any entanglements other than yourself occasionally?
None to speak of.
What about escapements? Do any oysters get out? And I know I've been reading about aquaculture and escapements and
Yeah.
things. So have you had that happen? All right. I was talking to the smart people at the Auburn University Shellfish Labs. Hey, Sarah. And they were talking about this diploid and triploid thing. What's all that about?
Yeah, diploids and triploids are different types of oysters that we.
Have you heard of the shellevator?
Oh yeah.
That's the future. I'm just trying to help you out a little here. One thing I was concerned about is these animals, you get them as like little baby oysters, and then they're kept in a cage their entire life. Is that correct? True or false?
That's
True or
true.
false? They never get get out and be with the other oysters.
All the cage-free oysters
Okay.
are gone.
And the last thing I was, reading about the life cycle and everything, if done correctly, the oysters are consumed alive. True or false?
True, true.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaming. That's all I got.
That was kind of a NIMBY in disguise. I feel like you came off a little too nice there, I think. Yeah, though, that was good. Do y'all have any questions before we end here?
Short comments.
Questions or comments? If, yes.
At high school elements. So we were from the West Coast, we were at a meeting where a batch of graduate students showed up and were speaking completely out of, there was no fact at all to what they were talking about. And I think that those of us who have that connection with the academic research community, it's really important to bring them in. And it was part of a class project for them to come to a hearing and bash shellfish aquaculture. And it was really frightening. Luckily, there was one of the students from that same cohort who applied for a job with me. And she asked the wonderful question, is there anything about my materials that cause concern? And I said, yes. The fact that you have this professor who is known to bring students, ill-informed students, to hearings for aquaculture gives me pause. And she and I talked about it, and I've talked to other of the cohort about it, but it can't stop. That community, that research community of students who are about to launch a career, to be so negative and so ill-informed is really a problem. So that's you, Bill.
We tried really hard to not make this negative. It was so hard, but there is that side to what we do.
So it sounds like numbers are important in a hearing like the one that you guys got beat up on. There's only so many farmers to come to a hearing like that. Do you think that consumers or like patrons of the oyster bar are a potential source to have numbers for you?
Yeah, we actually did an event where we, this was before the hearing, where we obtained a ton of signatures. I think like 300 signatures for people in support. But I think just like town council meetings, and if you don't have your town council meetings on your calendar, you should definitely put those in there and show up and be the voice for the industry in your local community. But I think it's the angry voices sometimes just carry a lot farther.
But yeah, like we constantly take that opportunity if people come into the oyster barn is to educate them, and everybody on staff knows like the first thing that you say is, hey, we're an oyster farm, and you give them a little spiel, because that's pretty much why we do Shuck and Chill.
Great job, you guys. I'm Bill Dewey with Taylor Shellfish in Washington State. And your presentation was just spot on all your information. The one addition I would add, Connor, you're right about listening empathetically. When people raise legitimate concerns, you need to be responsive to them. We're not all right all the time. So listening carefully and where you can make changes to address those concerns is really important too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, we're gonna move on. Thank you to Alyssa and Connor and Rusty and Kanan.